So join me as I dive into the nitty-gritty of buying off the plan and the things that you absolutely must know before you buy anything. Hi, I'm Simon Atkins, your brand new apartment specialist, helping you buy, invest, and relocate in Perth. If you'd like a free consult with me, my details are in the description below to help you anything pertaining to brand new apartments in Perth. It's totally free, so check out my details below. So I'm going to jump straight into it. So the benefits of buying off the plan, I'll go through the benefits first, and then some of the challenges that you might have through buying off the plan. So the first benefit is that you just pay a deposit to hold the property. So unlike when you do a home build, for example, you buy a piece of land and you get a builder to come and build a home, you generally make progress payments. So you make the builder requests payment for the slab and then plate height, and the bricks get to a certain height, and then the roof and so on, and you make those progress payments as the build goes. So you essentially fund the development as you go through the building of that house. With an apartment, you just pay a deposit. So it's generally 10%, and that sits in a trust account on your behalf. And if it's $20,000 or more, or for 3 months or longer, then it can go into a term deposit and earn you some interest during that period of time as well. So very different scenarios there. It's just a small deposit to hold that property and get you going. So the second benefit is stamp duty savings. So the West Australian government has brought in some stamp duty savings. We've been in for a little while now, and there's two different types. Pre-construction, so at pre-construction, before construction starts of the apartment building, you get stamp duty benefits on that. So at the pre-construction stage, and also there's a different set of benefits that you get if you purchase during the construction. So they're pretty significant benefits. I won't mention them now, but I'll put them in the description below so you can see what they are. But they do allow, it's anyone that qualifies and can get finance and purchase the apartment. It's not for just first home buyers, it's for investors, it's for foreign investors, it's for downsizers, it's for upgraders, it's for everyone. So these benefits are developed for the actual project developer themselves, not for any specific demographic that's buying. So there's some very, very good stamp duty benefits. Number 3 is customization. So you can customize your apartment generally, particularly if you buy earlier in the process, before construction starts, or maybe soon after construction has started. The earlier the better. And then you do get some more options to be able to kind of customize the apartment to suit yourself a lot more. So these things are not necessarily set in stone, but of course, as the development moves further on and the developer gets kind of committed to certain items that they have to buy, then those types of things have to go out the window because they get too far through the construction process, obviously. But if you get in earlier, you can certainly customize your apartment. So number 4 is potential for capital growth before you actually settle on the property. So we're seeing this a lot now over the last couple of years, where people have purchased off the plan, and generally the earlier that you do that, the earlier in the process that you do that, the better. And they've purchased at one price, and by the time they settle on it, it's at a very much improved price. So just as one little anecdotal story that I did towards the end of last year, I got my partner to buy into a development herself in October last year, and about 16 months later, she's made about $90,000 on that particular little one-bedroom apartment that she's buying as an investment, and that apartment is still not due to settle for about another 6 months. So making very good gains, and we're seeing this across the board. So some people have made very, very large gains before they've settled on the property. So it does allow you to potentially, as the market grows in Perth, we're in the growth cycle. So as it grows over the next few years, it gives you some good options to be able to put your foot on a property now and hold the price, and then get the increased equity by the time that you settle on it. Also, for a lot of people that aren't ready to just go out and buy a house now or property now, if you're a downsizer, for example, it does allow you time, or a first home buyer is a good example as well. It allows you time to get your finances together. So, for example, if you're going to buy something off the plan now and it was 2 years away from completion, then it gives you a long time frame to be able to get your ducks in a row. It might be financing, it might be whatever, to sell your home, and it gives you plenty of time to do that until the development is ready for you to actually move into. So some people may not be ready to buy something now, but they like the idea of putting their foot on something by paying a deposit, holding that price, and then getting the benefit of it over, say, the next year or two, without being ready to actually buy that property outright. And of course, there's quite a few different advantages that you can get from that, of course. Mainly the last one that I mentioned, increased equity. But of course, if you're a downsizer and you already have a house, that's going up as well. And if you're got control of a property in the development that you're looking at moving into, that you'll have 2 properties going up instead of just one. So all kinds of benefits there. So number 6 is that you can buy into a high median house price location at a fraction of the cost of someone else that's buying, say, a house in that location. But you still get access to all the amenity that is in that particular location. So what I mean by that, and let's look at an example. Say, for example, if you were to move into Subiaco, you could move into Subiaco and buy a house there, and it might cost you $2 million. And yet you still get the benefit of the location, because the location is what makes property rise, depending on where you are. For example, if you're in Cottesloe, if you took the ocean away from Cottesloe, it's a very different scenario. So the location is what makes the area grow. So with that in mind, if you're thinking about someone like I just mentioned, Subiaco, and somebody might pay $2 million for a house, then when you're buying, say, for example, $1 million for an apartment, or even less, $800,000 for an apartment, then it means that you're getting into that same location that has all the benefits that somebody else has paid $2 million for that house for. And you still get access to all the boutique shopping, the nightlife, the entertainment, etc., that you have, and the convenience of the location in these blue chip locations that we normally see, and they're ideal for apartment style living. So again, it really helps. Downsizers come to mind there, where sometimes it's a financial downsize. They downsize to a smaller property, they sell their home, and then they put some of that excess into the super, and it gets them. But it's still, you can still live in an area, in a location that has got a great location in terms of what you've got access to, and still be very, very happy there without the need for operating a large home that's probably you've really don't require anymore. First home buyers also come to mind there, where you can get into an amazing suburb, again, like I mentioned, at a fraction of the price, and still get the benefit of the same things that are in that location that somebody's paid a lot more for. So great way to get into very nice locations without paying an arm and a leg for it. So number 7 is a deposit bond. So if you're looking to move into an apartment, some developers will accept deposit bonds. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but a deposit bond is essentially a certificate that you receive from a deposit bond issuer that says you're good for the deposit. Okay, so they've done an assessment of you. You might have $1 million equity in your house, or you might have $500,000 equity in your house, or whatever it is, and they say, yes, they're good for the deposit. And let's say the deposit that you need to put down to hold the apartment is $80,000. That means that the certificate goes to the developer, and they accept that as your cash deposit, instead of having to put $80,000 into a trust account like I mentioned before. So what that does is it just means that sometimes people don't have that money. They might pay to lend it, or they might have to break a term deposit or sell some shares or whatever it might be. Instead of that, it might be a better option to do a deposit bond. You do get charged a fee on that, and they vary depending on the amount of the deposit bond and the term that they have to run for. But it's generally a fraction of the cost of what it might cost you, say, for example, to get an equity loan against your house to try and pay for the deposit. So possibly worth looking into. So amenity, so obviously new apartment developments can come with quite a lot of amenity. I'd say if you're looking at moving into an apartment, one of the first things to decide, if you're really not sure about what you want to move into or have no real clue about that, but you know you're probably going to downsize or you want to move into an apartment, you've never done it before, one of the first things to look at is the amount of amenity it has, because if an apartment block has pools and gyms and all kinds of other stuff, then generally the strata fees around that are higher because people have to maintain that. So any common ground, i.e. anything that isn't basically someone's internal part of the property that they actually own themselves. So the common areas have to be looked after, and that comes out of the strata fees. So that's one thing. I'll look at how much amenity an apartment block has. Of course, I'm putting this under benefits because a lot of people find it's a great benefit to be able to have amenity in your own development, where you can just go to the gym there. It's very, very easy. It's paid for, and you've got all of that literally on your doorstep, and you don't even have to leave home. So, but the other side is, while I bring that up, the other side of that is if you don't want the amenity and you decide that it's not something you want to be paying for someone else to be using, then of course you can get into developments that really have none of that stuff at all, and it brings the strata fees down as well. So number 9, I will mention, once you buy into the development, sometimes people wait to see if there's anything left of that development, if they really like it, so that they can actually walk around something and see it. But I can tell you, and that's fair enough, there's no problem with that, of course, at all, if somebody decides that that's what they want to do. But I will say that the people that, and it's no different with house and land, I've seen the same thing there, people that buy in early always tend to do the best, particularly if you understand where you are in the market. And as I mentioned, we're in the growth cycle, you can do very well out of it. So what happens is, because the developer is, they build apartment blocks as a commercial enterprise, as a business, they're trying to make money out of it. So that means once you're in, if it's, say, you bought in and it's still 18 months or 2 years away from completion, the developer starts working for you financially, in a sense, because they're always going to be pushing the prices to get the most that they can constantly. So every price rise they have increases the equity of the property that you'll purchase into, as I mentioned before. So if you do wait and buy on completion, generally stamp duty benefits and things like that are no longer existent. But of course, it does give you the opportunity to be able to look around the development and make sure that you're entirely happy with it before you do anything. So the risks of buying off the plan would be, of course, number 1, the market itself. So like buying any property, if you buy it at a certain time in the market, probably a year or 2 later, or 5 years later, a different outcome can be expected, because it's either going to go up, go sideways, or go down. So unless you know when you're buying in the cycle, at what time in the cycle, what's expected to happen in the market over the next couple of years or so, then you obviously take the risk of buying something in potentially a market that's going to go down. And obviously, when you buy off the plan, the difference between buying off the plan is you put a deposit down and you're holding that price. And of course, 2 years later, if the market goes down, then potentially the bank, if you're getting bank lending for it, the value of that property could be lower, and therefore it means you have to put more of a deposit in, or potential have problems with the bank financing around that. So that's certainly one negative around buying off the plan. And really, like I said, the key to that is understanding where you're on the market. But there are some ways that we can potentially get around that that I will mention a little bit later on. So number 2 is completion delays. So sometimes the apartment development doesn't complete when it's expected, and therefore that means that you can't get access to it, particularly if you're someone that's moving into it. Investor is probably less likely to be affected by that, but if you're moving into it yourself as your own home, then that can be very frustrating. And of course, if that time drags on a bit, it can of course have an impact on you. So sometimes things like hold-ups with the building, things around council, anything really that can put a kibosh in the process in terms of getting that project delivered to you as soon as they can, as soon as the builder and the developer can, is obviously going to be a bit frustrating for you. I will say at this point though, it's in everybody's interest to get any development done as soon as possible, particularly an apartment development over a building of a house. And the reason I say that is because that you're basically getting that property built for you. So you're really only putting the deposit down. And of course, the people that are putting the money in to actually get it built obviously want it completed as soon as possible, because they don't get paid until everybody settles and gets into their new home. So the builder and or the developer may face financial risk. I didn't say this is number 3. The financial risk or insolvency or something like that. We've had a lot of that lately over the last couple of years, particularly on the East Coast. We've seen a lot of builders and that go to the wall, and that's because we've had such a challenging construction period, probably the most challenging construction period in our history, I would imagine, because a lot of the post-COVID stuff caused a lot of problems in terms of supply and in terms of cost blowouts, etc. And that's why a lot of developers or a lot of builders went under, because the costs that they told people that they could build a property for, they just couldn't do that anymore. So a lot of issues around that. I think that's beginning, as we get further away from COVID, that's beginning to straighten itself out. But of course, that's always a risk that people think of, particularly when it's in the news a lot. And I would say that, again, when you buy an apartment, there's multiple stakeholders in that. There's the financiers, there's the developer, and anyone else that's putting money in towards that development has an interest in seeing that through. When you build a house, and I use this as another example again, really you're the stakeholder because you're paying for it to be done. If the builder goes bust and walks away, you're stuck with having paid for half a house or however many progress payments you've made at that point. But when you're doing a development like this, because it's, like I mentioned before, it's a business, and there's multiple stakeholders often that need to get that completed, then there's more likely the chance to getting that completed, even if, say, for example, the builder goes under. And we've had a couple of examples like that just recently. One where the builder went under and the developer just picked up the slack and subcontracted, and that development has got through to just about to completion now, and it's actually ran pretty smooth. It's probably going to be about 6 weeks delayed from the original settlement time frame, but all in all, it's been a really good outcome. And I think it's worth, like I said, we've been through challenging times, and sometimes things can get blown a little bit out of proportion, but it is a risk. And it's like building any property for someone is always going to be a risk. There's risks involved, so it would be negligent of me to not mention it. But just remember, every single place, every single property that you have in a city has been built at some point in time. So that's just, like I said, just worth trying to keep that into context. So number 4, the inability to inspect the property when you're buying off the plan. So, not everyone can read plans. We do have, or can really get a feel for it. It would be very difficult to really fully understand what you'd be getting really from a plan. Some people have more confidence in doing that than others. But I will say in today's market, in today's world, we've got virtual reality and all kinds of different, online tools and that we use, pretty amazing ones actually, that can give you an amazing feel for what a development's going to be like when it's completed. Now, these are very, very expensive tools, so not all developers can spend the money on that. So in some cases, you are stuck with just a plan to try and sort out what it is that you're going to end up with. But I will say that, if you can certainly buy off the plan, if you get into a development where it's got virtual reality or something like that, then I can tell you it really is a game changer. But it's certainly for people, for developments that don't have that, it is can certainly be a negative. For a lot of people, strata fees are an issue in apartment developments. They see that as like a waste of money, but I think it's worth remembering that strata fees are there to pay for all the building insurance. The only real insurance that you would need to pay for would be your contents, but even then, a lot of apartment blocks, you've got to get a fob to get into the driveway, you've got to get a fob to get onto your floor of the development, and often you're on a multi-story building. I'd question really if some people even had contents insurance in those situations, but if you want contents insurance, that would probably be the only thing you'd need to pay for. Everything outside of the apartment walls that aren't owned by someone else are common property, and that's what the building insurance and the strata fees pay for. It's the upkeep of any amenity that you've got in there, and so there's really nothing else to pay for. If the roof blows off the building, then that's covered. You don't have to sort that out. Obviously, you're going to have building insurance if you buy a house or anything else, and so I've looked around at some of the comparisons as to what an apartment might be in terms of strata fees versus a house. When you have to pay for building insurance and other things anyway, it's hard to get data on that, really comparing it. But I would say, if you want that lock and leave lifestyle, which a lot of people move into apartments exactly for that, then it's not a bad option. And like I said, strata fees are really something that, even though some people see them as a negative, they do, it does mean that everything's taken care for outside of your own apartment. So number 6, a change of situation. So what if you put a deposit down on a property and you decide that you don't want to go ahead with it anymore? Maybe you're going to go through a divorce or something like that, or a separation, or whatever reason, and you've got your deposit there. The developer is under no obligation to give a deposit back if they complete the development. So what often happens is, people come to us around that, and what we do is resell the apartment before completion, so that the new buyer comes in, they give the developer the deposit, and that person gets their deposit back and they move on. So we do get that from time to time, and people's situation obviously do change, particularly when you're buying something. Now you're putting the deposit down, it may not be finished for 2 years or so, and so there are ways of doing that. There's also, if you can settle on it, then sometimes people want to settle on it so that they get the capital growth that they've accomplished, or accumulated, I should say, over that last year or two. So they can settle on it, we can then resell it at that point, and then they get the capital gain that they've made over that period of time, and then the two parties, or can go their own way, or the person that didn't want the property anymore can leave. And so that's a couple of ways around that. Getting your deposit back in those situations. But I will say I have found in most instances, the developers do give people their deposits back, but again, they're not obligated to do that. So if you put a deposit down, these are unconditional contracts, so expect that if you don't go through with the settlement, then potentially the developer is legally able to keep your deposit. Number 7, changing the surrounding area. So obviously, when you buy into developments, brand new developments, normally the area around that is zoned for development, which is why you're buying into the development that you are, because it is zoned for building apartment blocks. And I'd say probably the biggest query we get with people is around views. So if your apartment has a view, people are worried, obviously, that what else is going to be built around there that might impinge their view, or might get in the way of their view and potentially bring the value of their apartment down. So obviously that's a concern for quite a few people. So we obviously work with them and go through that, and either allay their fears, or just put it on the table and say, look, in this instance, something could be done in front of you here, and we just have to be open and transparent about that, and just let you understand that depending on the situation, because some developments are looking out over a freeway or out towards water or whatever it might be, and in those instances, you're not going to get built out if you're on the edge of an area like that. Generally, when you're in the middle of an area, let's say, for example, you're in the middle of South Perth, for example, things can get built around you, and therefore potentially your views can get built out, or at least part of your view can get built out. So it's worth asking the questions. If you've got something with an outlook or a view, trying to get an understanding from people like us around what might be happening in the future. So obviously buying off the plan, there's some advantages and disadvantages in doing that. Like with most things in life, life isn't one-sided. We have, some upsides and downsides to just about every decision you ever have to make. And it's really obviously a decision for yourself as to, what you're looking to do, what kind of lifestyle you want, etc. So, there's obviously advantages in terms of like customizations and things like that, buying in early, and getting, the apartment you want at a lower price potentially, and getting some uptick if you're buying at the right time. There's obviously risks if you're buying at the wrong time, or developer issues or builder issues along the way, and potential delays, all that type of thing. So at the end of the day, it's best talking to us about it and trying to help you understand all of these, I suppose, positives and negatives, and how they might specifically affect you. And of course, any development that you're looking to buy into, then getting an understanding, I guess, around the builder that's actually building it, what's their track record like, the developer, what have they done in the past, etc., and getting a good feel for the actual people that are behind the development itself. Okay, so I hope this was of some help if you're looking to be buying off the plan in Perth. And again, if you'd like to have a free phone consult with me, my details are below in the description, and I can help you anything to do with brand new apartment living in Perth. If you're looking for one now, it's a great time to be getting into the market, and I hope to hear from you soon.